Following the discovery of crude oil, Nigeria has repeatedly grown into a major food importing nation as the government has become neglectful of the agricultural sector, since petroleum is considered a more viable resource for economic development. The situation quickly polarized the nation into high and low income groups. Unfortunately, while only a small fraction of the population benefited from the oil wealth, and the population suffered the misfortune of food insecurity as they can hardly afford the rising prices of imported foods. At the onset of this administration, government created intervention programs to solve the problem of food security across the country. This has led to the improvement in rice production across the country, but prices has remained very high. We'll talk about this, and we have in the studio the National Chairman, Northeast Commodity Association, Haji Sadiq Dawari. He will be talking to us about this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, food insecurity, food inflation, over 19%, up from about 18% within the space of 1 month. How is this? How did we get here? Let me put it that way. How did we arrive at where we are now?
Thank you very much for having me here. And I'm also happy during your introduction you have mentioned that the present administration had put in place a lot of intervention programs to support agriculture in Nigeria. Before now, the country largely depends on importation of food and other related commodities. But today, the government has put in place programs with a very good intention to support local production so that employment can be created. People are now gainfully employed, and to some extent agriculture has now become a business in Nigeria. Going back to your question that there is a lot, yes, there are inflation in the country, but largely not depends on agri-commodity alone. Every other commodity within and outside the country, to some extent, the price has skyrocketed. But however, in Nigeria today, that it is not far away from issues that we have on ground.
No, but if you look at the NBS data, it shows largely what has been attributed as the cause of the inflation. The headline inflation that we have is the high prices of food products, the consumables. That's basically what's driving the inflation. So what's happening with the supply chain?
You also need to remember that in the cost of production, you need a lot of inputs. And when those inputs are costly, then it can reflect to the output as well. The high cost of input to some extent is a recipe for hunger anyway. But an input that costs, for example, 1,200 naira for a liter of agrochemical last year, today cost close to 4,000 naira. So what we are seeing in the price of food and other related commodities is as a result of the cost of input itself. Talk of herbicide, talk of chemicals, even the mechanization input that can be deployed to support production. So it is not a magic because commodities are now high in price within a small period of time. We also need to remember that the cost of producing 1 hectare of rice, for example, has jumped using the economics of production from 320,000 naira to close to 580,000 to cultivate 1 hectare. So the price of commodity to some extent has to go up.
Well, now you have said it, the government had pumped in a lot of money in intervention funds to agriculture, maybe through the CBN's Uncle Borrowers program and others. But one thing, of course, for the end user, the price, food on the table is what matters. And rice still costs very high. Of course, you try to explain some of these things, but even before this recent, inflation caused by, like naira dollar rates and all that, the rice had not gotten to where it should be, and a lot of people are somehow even missing the good old days of imported rice. Why is the problem? Why is it so?
Why do you think the price of rice has to go down when the price of other related input that you use in production is still high? I'm happy that the present administration has banned importation of food into the country with a very good intention to support local production. But however, you cannot ban importation of food, but then you also allow importation of inputs, agro inputs coming in. For example, you ban importation of rice, but however, people import agrochemicals into this country. A liter of agrochemical that is imported from China, from India, has 73 to 75% water content. The additive is just 3 to 5%. So what I'm trying to say here is that while you stop importation of food into this country, then you also have to encourage local production of those inputs that is required to cultivate rice and other commodities into this country.
Okay, well, we'll continue the conversation, but let's bring on board via Zoom a farmer based in Birnin Kebbi in Kebbi State, Abdullahi Idris Zuru. Good morning, Mr. Zuru, and thank you very much for joining us. Well, so we are discussing the huge investment in agriculture by the government vis-a-vis the price of food that keeps soaring, as recently revealed by the National Bureau of Statistics. Why are we having very high food, especially rice, for example? We know Kebbi State is one of the pioneers of this rice revolution, as it is called. What is happening with the price of food, especially rice?
But the problem that cropped up after the launching of the Anko Boros program in 2015, there was hope for the farmers that it was going to produce the desired results of increasing production, which will ultimately lead to prices in the market. In 2015, it was successful, so to say, towards the end. But lately, the situation changed because the program could not be implemented the way it was planned. The federal government has a very good intention. The intervention program has attempted to produce the desired result, but much later, things changed, particularly now. If you look at the cost of production per hectare, at that time it was 240 to 250,000 naira, but now it has reached 500,000 plus just to cultivate a hectare, and that's not even the issue. But another contributing factor is the adulteration of the inputs. Most farmers now go to open markets, buy fertilizer, which is adulterated, buy herbicides and insecticides, which are equally adulterated. So by the time they use it, instead of increasing their production and the yield per hectare, it ultimately at the end destroy their plant. So the little they get after spending much more, you can imagine how much are they going to see to sell it, to break even. That is one of the factors. Then the support of the government of recent, almost in all the states, you will see the support being given in terms of input, financial assistance, and something you know, when people are harvesting the rice, the wet season farming rice, they are being given fertilizer to do what it is. And if they go to the market, the price of fertilizer today has reached up to 25 to 27,000 naira per bag. And even the support being given by the government, they will give 5 or 10 farmers 1 bag of fertilizer. How can he produce what they want? So as a result of that, the cost of production increased, the loss of the farmers increased. The little they get, they cannot just give it out, sell it at giveaway price. And ultimately, the processors will have to buy it like that. And when they do, how do you expect them to break even with high cost of diesel? Now about 1,000 loss per liter.
All right.
The precision of the machine, cost of machine.
All right. All right. So let's
machinery.
Okay, let's get back to the studio.
These are some of the factors that cause high cost.
Okay, let's get back to the studio. Alhaji Sadiq, how can we encourage local production of some of these inputs? Is it so impossible that we cannot source some of these inputs locally? And if we can, what are the deterrents?
Thank you very much. Yes, if truly Nigerians are serious, we can be able to support local production of the agro inputs. Just like what the farmer from Kebbi have said, that yes, smallholder farmers who to some extent support local production in Nigeria today sell all what they have produced previous year to support their current farming cycle. You hardly get a good inputs today without being adulterated. A lot of fertilizer you see in the market today, a lot of herbicide you see in the markets today are adulterated, and to some extent it affects yield. A farmer that used to have probably 4 tons per hectare of rice after cultivation hardly get that today because the agro input are so much adulterated. And it is at the result of high cost of this. Government has supported farmers by creating an interventions like Ankoboros program. To this year, now I'm not sure that the central bank has given out money to support farmers. I'm aware that for close to 5 years now, year in, year out, dry season, wet season, the governor of central bank to some extent has did tremendously well by supporting, by creating the chain, supporting farmers by providing them with loan facilities, supporting the agro millers with also money to support their own processing so that the farmer can produce and the miller can offtake. At least the business has been booming for the past 5 years. But for this 2022, I'm part of the commodity associations across the country. I don't think government has supported any farmer this year. And I'm also using this medium to call on the government that they should please continue to support farmers.
But regardless of the support of government, we are seeing that the inputs now are posing more challenge because, I mean, despite all the interventions by government, the prices are still up there. So should we be refocusing our attention to probably getting the inputs locally? How can we do that? I want you to talk on that.
Yes. We have a lot of deposit of raw materials. You may recall that there is a bilateral agreement between Nigeria and Morocco at the inception of this administration, where we get raw materials from Morocco and to support our own fertilizer blenders in the country. So it can go a long way if government also focuses on the support to the fertilizer producing companies, to herbicide producing companies, to also support assembling plant for tractors and other mechanization input. It will go a long way in helping in stabilizing the price of commodities into this country.
So these are very important steps that you mentioned. In a nutshell, we are running out of time. What can your association, or are you thinking as a commodity association of maybe price control to at least ameliorate the issue of maybe sometimes bearish increase in inflation of food items and all that? Are you doing anything to that regard?
Yes. The Central Bank of Nigeria went further to also establish the commodity exchange market last year, and calling and inviting all stakeholders to come in place and make sure that we supported the program. It will to some extent help in supporting the price of the commodities. But however, the basic thing is to make sure that there is constant and steady production. It is then and there that we will experience a price stability. If at all there is a fluctuation in the price of agro input, in the output of production, then certainly it will be very difficult for us to have a stable price of commodities.
Briefly before we go, to what extent has insecurity affected our food production, and what arrangements can be made to ensure that farmers can actually go to their farms?
Yes, insecurity to some extent has affected production, farming activities in Nigeria for a few years. But it is not all over the country. The government should also concentrate that where there are issues of security in other places, then the government need to shift an attention to other places that have relative peace so that they can support production. Before now, there was issue of insecurity in the northeast, particularly Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa axis. But to some extent that there is relative peace now. We also have another one in the northwest. So where there are relative peace, I think government has to put more attention in supporting production in that area. It is not only insecurity. The flood and drought and other menaces also affect production. We need our farmers to also listen to relevant agencies in making sure that they know period to plant, a period to harvest, so that we can avoid flooding that we have been experiencing across
These are
the
very
country.
important tips, and thank you very much, Sadiq Dawari, Chairman, Northeast Commodity Association, for being with us, and we hope to have you another time.